Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Elio. All I ever wanted was to find a place where I can fit in. Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin, and if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric. And joining me for today's spoiler-free review are two dudes who are out of this world. I adore them. They're part of my communiverse. Nate Shelton, Darcy Hudson. How you both doing?
Oh, man, you are not alone, Justin.
No,
I'm not alone. I'm happy not to be alone. I'm happy I'm here with you.
I felt like I was alone for a little while just because I'd seen this movie before you guys, but just hearing some thoughts kind of trickle through, very excited to talk to you about this movie. I'm looking forward to getting into it because, this is a Disney and Pixar original, if we will. I'm just gonna call it like that, like it is. It's an original film. It's not based on anything else that's been done. It's no sequel. It's no franchise of that Pixar's built. It is entirely new, and I adore it for that reason. One thing I was surprised with this movie, and I know we all reluctantly went and saw this movie in 3D because it is screening in 3D, and it's really interesting because Nate, you and I actually all three of us were talking about just, do people go and see movies in 3D anymore? I'm not always a great big fan of 3D. I think there needs to be really specific situations. So I wanted to ask before we even start kind of talking about, how do you guys feel about 3D?
I mean, I think I feel like it might be something different based on live action to animation. Usually, though, no matter what, when I go see a 3D movie, it is so dark and so, like, just visually, the screen is so much darker through those glasses. And Darcy, I can imagine for you, it's even trickier having to wear glasses.
Yeah, some of those darker scenes, you can see your eyeballs reflecting back at you, which is a bit distracting.
Right.
I'm also a permanent glasses wearer, so I understand the scenario in which you're speaking of, Nate. But yeah, it does feel like it's always a little bit darker. I think the last time I remember having like a sort of awe-inspiring 3D experience was the last Avatar, The Way of Water.
Yeah, it was a spectacle.
100%. That was my word of choice. Right. I basically pull quoted myself for years to come. But no, I think Darcy, you were with me when we went and saw that. So was Meg. But when we left, we all kind of had like headaches and felt sort of disoriented from the experience. So I do find that heavy 3D with really big depth separation can give me a little bit of eye strain. I feel a little tired. My eyes are doing a lot more work, especially when it's like, when you have that for that film. I know they had the 3D, but then they also had that high frame rate, if I'm not mistaken.
I was going to say, I feel like the high frame rate in that one was what gave me the headache, because the 3D was great, but when you pair it with the high frame rate, it gets a lot. It's like a Disney ride without the fun of a ride, and it lasted 2.5 hours. So,
well, yeah, you bring it up, and I love that you did. Is that we usually get a lot of great 3D experiences in Disney rides, and for yourself, Darcy, like when you think about 3D and that experience for yourself, is there any one experience that really stands out to you, or is there a reason why you might not necessarily always jive with 3D is in the theater experience?
I mean, the rides, I think, again, pairing it with the motion makes it feel so much more like a ride, and it's not just watching a screen anymore. And I think when you translate to sitting in a screen or in a theater, looking at a still screen with no movement for an extended period of time, that just kind of takes me out of it a bit, I guess. Again, especially when I'm glad we've gotten past this point, but 3D was very much the get out in your face and look at how much we can come out of the screen. And I like how I think we're going in the right direction, and that is more going into the screen now, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way from like Flubber in 3D, where it's just every 4 seconds things are trying to be thrown at you.
Well, that's the gimmick with it, right? It's spatial, right? Like, I think the one thing with Avatar that always really stood out was just how it was going into the screen, right? Like
Mhm.
you saw the depth in the world based on just what was in the foreground and what was in the background, and how the characters were placed in the midground, right? And of every shot, and that just helped give it that sort of that life. But we'll talk about the 3D in this film, but I thought I would introduce that because we saw this movie in 3D, and the movie that we are talking about today is Disney and Pixar's Elio. Let's get you up to speed on what this movie's about. For centuries, people have called out to the universe looking for answers. In Disney and Pixar's all-new feature film Elio, the universe calls back. The cosmic misadventure introduces Elio, a space fanatic with an active imagination and a huge alien obsession. So when he's beamed up to the Communiverse, an interplanetary organization with representatives from galaxies far and wide, Elio's all in for the epic undertaking. Mistakenly identified as Earth's leader, Elio must form new bonds with eccentric alien life forms, navigate a crisis of intergalactic proportions, and somehow discover who and where he is truly meant to be. This film stars Jonas Kabrib as Elio, Zoe Saldana as Aunt Olga, Remy Edgerly as the lovable Glorden, Brad Garrett as Lord Grygon, Jamila Jamil as Ambassador Cuesta, and Shirley Henderson as I am going to throw in one more in here that is not listed here, and that is Brendan Hunt as Gunther. What was his last name, Nate?
Melmac.
Gunther Melmac. He is definitely a delight. I'm sad that he was not put in this voice cast list. The film is directed by three different directors. We have Madeline Sharafian, Domee Shi, and Adrian Molina. Elio releases in theaters June 20th. So at the time of you're listening to this review, that is tomorrow. So we are very excited to get this review out for you to enjoy. A huge thanks to our friends at Disney Studios Canada and at Pixar, by extension Pixar, for allowing us to see this movie early for review. And also, just on that note, we did post our interviews for this film that are already out now on YouTube, youtube.com/geekcentric, and on podcast feeds. I had the opportunity to talk with Brad Garrett, the voice of Lord Grygon. So you can hear a little bit more about the insights of some of the themes that we're going to be talking about today, like family, loneliness, being bullied, and also just parenting, which was really a lot of fun to kind of connect with Brad on. And then also had the opportunity to talk with co-director Domee Shi, Canada's own Domee Shi, in person here in Toronto. Again, a huge thanks to Disney Studios Canada for setting up those interviews, and both of them are available on podcast feeds and on our YouTube channel. So go check those out as well. But let's get into talking about this movie. I think the place that we want to start is the animation, because this is like so much of what we see in this feels familiar but entirely fresh. Darcy, what did you feel? How did you feel about the animation and the look and feel of Elio?
Again, on the heels of Turning Red and Win or Lose, I was really excited for this film, especially after Elemental and the way they pushed the physics engines they had for that film. And again, they just step it up again with this movie with some really incredible, awe-inspiring wide shots of space, but then also the detail and texturing you get in all the characters' clothing and the different alien skins and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, Pixar is doing what they do best, which is creating a very rich and detailed world in this galaxy far away. Basically, it was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's Pixar, right? And they are it's I was saying this to Darcy. I'm like, I shouldn't be surprised at this point when it comes to just how much I loved the look and feel of this movie, but I think they're constantly and consistently producing outstanding visuals in all their films. And I love this movie. I love the environments in this movie. I think being a movie that does take place mostly in space, it is very captivating. And you brought up the 3D earlier and we were talking about it. I was kicking and screaming going into this movie with the 3D, and I'm so happy we saw it in 3D. I would recommend to see this movie in 3D, which is crazy, but I think coupled with the visuals, it's so immersive. Like, it feels like you're floating in space along with Elio. You're kind of almost like on a Disney ride. And I think the use of color and the lighting was so well done in this movie. It just makes the experience that much better and more immersive when you're almost kind of surrounded by light in a sense while you're watching this film. And the Communiverse looks so cool. I want to be there. I want to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think it's visually stunning and it's very distinct. And I think you really see it in the way that the sort of bold contrast between Earth's sort of cold, rigid, like the military base style, like everything is just very almost like, I'm going to use a buzzword here, but brutalist style, if you will. But like you also have like this warm, organic, fluid design to the Communiverse that just just feels so contrasty to the way Earth looks. And I think they beautifully set up and just giving each world a very distinct look. But you mentioned it, the color design is just so masterful. I think each alien species has a very calibrated palette of colors that just make them so unique and just vibrant. And I feel like in some cases a lot of the looks kind of reminded me of like macro photography, like just like very molecular, very like uh up close and like just very detailed. And I really liked it. But you brought it up, Darcy, the animation style from Turning Red and Win or Lose, those exaggerated expressions, the fluid movement, the bit of the visual humor. Some of it was there, some of it wasn't. I think that this took what it could from those projects from a character design standpoint and brought it over. But I think it also brought down the volume of, let's say, some of the more exaggerated animation styles that we would expect from a very Domee Shi led film. I think that there wasn't as much of that reference to anime or sort of like those quintessential cartoon pop culture references in terms of the exaggerated expressions or the certain line work, but there was its own vibe for it that felt very unique. So you can feel that there's a bit of a give and take relationship in the way that they created this world, where they're saying, let's work with the character design. Like Elio's character design feels like it was from something like Turning Red, or just in terms of the proportions in the bodies and stuff like that. Like all the ligaments of his body feel like they're sort of like one continuous line. Like there's like how like you would get like skinny ankles. His just ankles are just like thick. You know what I mean? So right. But I like that character design. I like the look of it, and it feels also purposely different from something else like Inside Out, which also has a very unique character design from the characters that are within Riley's head, but also the human characters that are designed in that world. Like there's more of a, I guess, like a pseudo realistic approach to designing them. So I really applaud them for going for this film to have its own vibe that still feels like it's pulling in all the inspiration of what's come before it.
Yeah, I think Elio kind of looked a little bit like Domee Shi's bow mixed with Turning Red in a sense, right? And there's a little bit of Coco thrown in there, and I think that makes sense with Adrian Molina involved. But I think you brought up earlier the macro. I think microscopic is kind of the character design. We're getting a lot of, like, especially with the aliens, we're getting a lot of those like sort of I don't even know what you would describe them as, but like
fluid,
almost
they're
insect
organic.
like organic kind of look to them, and I love that. I think I also want to shout out the way that this movie almost feels like it was shot it's like a sci-fi movie, like a classic sci-fi movie. It feels very like Alien, and I was even kind of calling out like there's definitely references to all of those classic movies, but also felt very E.T. I think that had a lot to do with the lighting. Apparently Pixar used this Luna lighting tool set and in that's specific to this movie, and the movie is so, it benefits from it so much. So yeah, I really dug even just the sort of the way that this film was. It sounds weird to say it because it's an animated movie, but the way it was shot.
No, it's and I think that even something like Lightyear, that we got when we saw that. It felt so inspired from all of the fantastic sci-fi space movies that have come before it. 2001 Space Odyssey was definitely a huge inspiration there, especially with just like the stillness of space in some of the shots. And you got some of that here. You got like even some sort of like interstellar gravity-esque style sort of shots, which really hit in 3D as well, right? As you see like sort of this large spacescape, and then like maybe Elio just kind of like floating, and you see the planet, whatever planet it is that's just there in the background. I think it might have been the Communiverse, but again, there's such a deliberate approach to visually stylizing this and having moments that speak to the sci-fi movies that might have inspired some of these moments. And the ET vibes, I'm with you. I love the ET vibes of this, and I think it's just going a little bit further, right? Because there's a lot of layers about belonging and loneliness that come from like ET and this sort of bond that they have that is definitely runs parallel to sort of how Elio and Glorden form their relationship when we kind of get talking about characters. But yeah, the music, Nate, how did you feel about the music? Like I thought like in some instances it kind of landed, it didn't necessarily take front stage though.
I think it's one of those things where it doesn't. I think it does sort of feel. I just felt like it flowed really, really well. I think Rob Simonson is the composer on this, where it was like bouncy at times, but then the movie does such a good job. And I mean, this is kind of true in the story section of talking about this movie, but in terms of the tonal shifts, and Pixar they're masterful at doing this with their stories and with their characters and giving you those moments where you're like there's a few moments in this where like we're on an adventure, it's a lot of fun, bouncy music, and then quiet, and then a single piano tone will start to play, and my heart just goes, it splits in two, and the waterworks start going for me. I think Robert Simonson did a really, really good job with the composition for this movie, and yeah, I think I was also kind of getting, and this could have a lot to do with some of the visuals that we mentioned earlier as well, but I was getting mad Epcot vibes from the music as well, just walking around Epcot, especially how Epcot is in its like current form. And I was telling Darcy, I'm like, they better bring Elio to Epcot. Like the Communiverse needs to be at Epcot.
That's
the perfect building right next to Guardians that isn't being used.
Yes,
Otherworld's Pavilion. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Just all I'm saying.
To your point though, Nate, it sort of feels like the current state of Epcot would lend itself as the perfect place for a Communiverse themed restaurant,
anything.
Sort of, something like almost like a museum, where you sort of tailor it to like, this is the partnership between Earth and the Communiverse, and you get to see these things, and like there's a lot of things that you could see how it would trickle in. And again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here in terms of talking about how the parks can just suddenly absorb this and make money off of this thing, because God knows that they don't need more money.
They need it. They're struggling right now.
But definitely when you think of this idea with all of these properties, and again, I like I was saying off the top, like this is original for Pixar. This is an original story, which hasn't been something that like they've done, obviously, but like, we're getting a Toy Story 5, we're getting a Coco 2 at some point, right? Incredibles 3, like, and also Disney has just had so much, has put so much effort into doing sequels and live action reimaginings of their already existing stories. It's refreshing to get something that's completely original from Pixar yet again, that can be so inspiring, and you want to see how it could live on in those park experiences. So I think that just is a testament to how well the animation, the world building, everything that went into this really does feel.
Yeah, Disney, please don't let this be like a one and done thing. Sometimes these beautiful movies come out and then they go away. Like I was so stoked to get Four Town t-shirt when we were at Disneyland last time, right? Like that was amazing. Lovely to see Turning Red represented. So please, if it even in just California, please let this movie be represented more. One more thing I want to say just in regards to the look and feel before we continue is there are a couple, and I do literally mean a couple of instances where if you do have little ones, you're listening to this right now wondering, can I take my little one to this movie? It's going to be too scary for them. There are 2 moments where legitimately scary visuals and sounds do happen in this movie, but those moments are immediately followed by something wholesome. So if you and your little ones can survive those incredibly terrifying visuals for just a brief instant, you'll be instantly rewarded with laughs. And again, I love how Pixar has this way of naturally working in these tonal shifts, these comedic shifts, and they do that so naturally. And there are tons of moments in this movie, like I mentioned earlier, where it hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything goes quiet. You see Elio's reaction, and then we see Glorden reacting and saying something funny to bring us back to that laughter. So it happens quite a bit, but just be aware that you might have a couple of instances of hiding your eyes or something like that.
Honestly, as a kid growing up, I found Finding Nemo, the shark appearance, terrifying. This movie goes nowhere near that, especially because kids nowadays are being exposed to the horror aspect of things a lot earlier in parody things. I mean, Disney's done it before with the Cars on the Road, had the whole Haunted Mansion vibe that was a Shining knockoff. Like those scenes are very scary for adults who know what they're referencing. But if a kid is just watching it off the top of the head, they're going to see it more for the comedic play, I think.
I will say, though, the scene that I know that you're talking about,
let's just say it involves melting. That's all I'm going to say, and it's horrifying.
Well, that one was like hilarious. I actually was laughing my ass off at that one.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the introduction of Glorden.
Sure. Yeah. Even that.
So like
that's the other
that
one.
that was terrifying. I was like, oh my God, this thing is terrifyingly scary. And this was before I had actually like seen more detailed trailers of the movie. I kind of went into it a bit cold, like knowing what it was about, but not having seen a lot of the trailers. And I was pleasantly surprised, obviously, as you said, the tonal shift with that whole moment. But yeah, there are moments that are meant to kind of make you feel something. But I'm glad that Pixar doesn't shy away from that, because I don't know if Disney would necessarily. I know it's a partnership here that we're talking about, but I know Pixar is really driving this story, and they're making those creative decisions for the sake of the story. But to your point, it is about that pairing of, going the distance with how scary it is, and then shifting it right into something that's
to say to kids like, hey, it's okay, we're okay. It's okay. You can watch these moments,
especially with the Glorden. I think it landed for me with Glorden, where I was like, oh my God, this is actually kind of scary. And I could see Ellie, like my daughter, just not vibing with that and kind of getting scared. But then as soon as it shifts, I wonder if she'll get it and she'll be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see once she actually can see it. Well, we're talking about some of these characters. I feel like let's move into talking about some of these performances, and we should start with Jonas as Elio. What a standout performance. He brings such a vulnerability, his imagination, his charm that he brings, and just the way he expresses himself. I think obviously this movie, he carries this film with the emotional weight. There's a real sincerity. And I don't know. I also think he's incredibly relatable. At no point did he feel like he was overacting or in any way trying to stretch himself in a way that didn't feel authentic to his delivery. Everything felt natural. It did feel like Jonas is Elio and Elio is Jonas, and that you really do hear that in the performance.
I think my favorite thing about Jonas, and I think I wrote this down in big bold letters in my notes, is that Elio, because of Jonas's performance, he feels so authentically a kid. He's a kid, and his performance is so good that you kind of forget. You easily forget that Elio is a kid with dialogue and actions that are written by adults. Like, it just feels like we're watching a kid. And I think Jonas did such a good job. And like you said, Justin, he's so relatable, but he's kind of both relatable and overwhelming at times. And you'll see him freaking out in excitement. And, like I relate to that because I've definitely done that when I was a kid. I've acted silly and stupid and funny when I was so excited for something. But then I've also had the experience as an adult of asking someone like my younger members of my family to be like, yo, just chill for a minute when they get overly excited. So, I think it's he does such a good job at bringing that childlike wonder and sort of personality to the role, you can't help but fall in love with him because he's so cute. But at the same time, he never feels smarter than he should be. I think a lot of times when child characters are written by adults, there's a bit of a disconnect there where you're like, well, a kid wouldn't actually say that. But everything he says, everything he does, and just the entire performance from Jonas was just spot on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's funny that you said relatable and overwhelming, when being overwhelmed by a kid doing that is a relatable in itself. Type
For
thing.
sure.
You don't need to be a kid to understand why he's doing that, because you've adults who interact with kids daily will see those instances. It's just he's so genuine in his performance. Again, you really feel like he's a kid and he's awesome, and you fall in love with him almost as soon as he starts talking, and all his weird quirks that you learn throughout the movie. And then again, a lot of his love for him comes from his pairing with Glorden, because
Mhm.
Remy Edgerly did a fantastic job of bringing that tardigrade alien looking thing to life and making him so gosh darn adorable.
Yeah, he's terrifyingly cute. He's terrifyingly cute. He is an unexpected heart. I think he's such a fun character who becomes an emotional bridge for Elio's growth. Like, you know, for him to start to see what he wants from the world, and this being Elio, through his relationship with Glorden. It's just such a beautiful thing. And I like I was saying before, that's where you see this sort of ET analogy played out in a different way. You know, and I think it was just it caught me off guard, because again, I didn't know that there was going to be this super cute. I saw some stuff like popcorn buckets that you can like get of Glorden and stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I thought, like, based on his introduction, he was going to be a terrifying monster, and he was adorably cute and terrifyingly cute, as I said. So yeah, I think he was definitely the standout next to Jonas as Elio.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned being a terrifying monster, and it's funny how they sort of play that up in this movie, because in like previous versions of this film, he was supposed to be a terrifying antagonist character. And Justin, as you mentioned, you saw this before we got to see it, and you were saying like, you were like, you know how Neil's your guy from Skeleton Crew? Glorden is going to be your guy. And Justin, he is my guy. I fell in love with this little dude. You called it. And Disney Pixar, if you're listening, you've got me wrapped up in his webs. I will buy all the plushies, the t-shirts, the popcorn buckets, whatever I can get my hands on it. I'm here for it. Remy did such an excellent job. And again, I think we talk about, you know, Jonas's authentic performance. It's the same thing here. We're getting this kid who, you know, he's bringing this energy that he's just so excited. He's so excited back at the concept of being someone's first best friend.
Yeah.
And he's, you know, I think that's such a perfect pairing for Elio, who just wants a friend just as much. And they just make such a perfect buddy sort of relationship. And that's really where the movie sort of feels like it kicks off. It kicks into even higher gear, and also gives me a little bit more. I feel like we're able to sort of sink in a little bit more after those two meet. And Glorden is going to steal your heart. And I love that it's Glordon, but it's pronounced Glorden. And he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, I love the naivete that
Yeah.
he has as well, right? Like another sort of, if you will, persona, or maybe sort of thing that we might associate with kids, is that is that naivete,
Innocence and naivety.
Innocence, exactly. There you go. That's another great way of looking at it. So there is such a great sense of that in Glorden. And yeah, you're right, Nate. Like that's where when you start to see them paired up, and the story kind of takes a different direction, and it really kind of drives the heart of the film overall. Some other outstanding casts to call out, you know, Zoe Saldana as Aunt Olga. I can't think of another instance where she's been a voice actress. Can you guys think of anything else? Like
she was in The Book of Life, which oddly enough, you know, we're talking about a movie by Adrian Molina, who also did Coco, and, you know, The Book of Life kind of almost feeling like it was one of those like movies that
6
came
Degrees
out.
of Separation.
Right.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Inevitably, she just found her way into Pixar because of The Book of Life. Yeah,
That's
I get
it.
you.
Yeah.
I feel like witnessing that performance and seeing and hearing it, you know, she brings actually, like, I think a really grounded approach. Like you feel, we've talked about it before, when some actors step into these, you know, voice acting roles that they might lose a little bit of that acting side. It doesn't feel like Zoe has lost that.
Mhm.
She's an Academy Award winner now, so I think again she's bringing that grounded emotional complexity to her character. I feel like she balances that military strength that her character gives off, but also this unwavering sort of maternal aspect that she's just sort of lost at. And I feel like her dynamic with Elio, or with Jonas, it just feels really honest. It feels very authentic. And I just love that in a lot of ways, like, uh Elio feels extremely lost and just wanting to belong. And I feel like Aunt Olga is very much lost as well in this whole situation. And there's just this interesting parallel that they're both experiencing, but they're not able to kind of connect, if you will, on that until obviously circumstances change. So I think that there was the way Zoe landed her voice to bring this character to life was perfect. It was spot on.
Yeah, I remember when we were at D23 and she came on stage to talk about the film before,
Mhm.
like a while ago now. But she had there was such passion in her voice when she was talking about how excited was she to bring this character to life and the relationship she has with Elio. And again, so much of it just feels genuine. She talked about her kids being a huge inspiration. You could look at Elio and see her kid, and that was enough for her to just unleash the floodgates for those emotions. And it just goes so far because, like you said, they're both lost but unable to communicate, which is a lot of people go through. And just the fact that this movie jumps between outer space and Earth, and I'm on board for either story, just goes to show how strong these characters are.
Yes, exactly. And the way that they're able to parallel this idea of wanting to belong and feeling lost and not being able to connect, and connecting that with this idea of like intergalactic desire to want to know if we're are we alone? Is there an existence? There's this beautiful quote that's run through as well that we've heard a couple times that is, I think, of actual, I don't know who it's from because they never actually reference what it is, but it's such a powerful quote. And when you see it juxtaposed and with the shots of Elio and Olga, and just when the quote's laid over top, you understand that obviously the person speaking about galaxies and about this desire of wanting to know if life exists beyond this universe, but really you're watching two people on Earth that are suddenly starting to connect. So it's really beautiful. It's really powerful how they were able to marriage that together.
Yeah, I think a lot of animated movies that are aimed towards kids would opt to just stay with the kid character. And I really was happy with how much Aunt Olga we actually do get in this movie. And I think the other element to it too is getting a vulnerable parental figure is always fantastic. And we did get that a little bit in Turning Red in certain ways. And so getting to see that sort of even more on full display here, we just watched the live action Lilo and Stitch, and even going back to the animated version of that and seeing, a character like Nani who, she had to become a mom in a situation that she wasn't necessarily prepared for. And so here in Elio, we're seeing the sort of ebb and flow of that relationship even more, and how Olga struggles with sort of both sides of her decision making. And it's really nice to sort of see a character who is supposed to be this parental figure fail and make mistakes and sort of come to reckon with that in a way. And so, yeah, I was really, really happy with what Zoe brought to this character.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just to kind of parallel that with Brad Garrett's Lord Grygon and his relationship with his son Glorden, to that of Elio and Aunt Olga, is also really interesting. And you know that's very much what Brad talked about in our interview. He brought it up about this idea of what parenting looks like, and how he can relate to Lord Grygon on that level of wanting to be able to want the best for your kid in your own way, but maybe that kid doesn't necessarily want that,
Mm-hmm.
want that path. And I think that that's what's really interesting about this, is that we get to see sort of two sides of this parenting that still look like parenting, but just at opposite ends of a galaxy. So there's just something really lovely about it. I think obviously as Brad's a legend when it comes to voice acting, especially within Pixar. He has such a legendary voice, and he like did not disappoint as Lord Gragon. I think his energy was awesome, especially when he went like really like villain, but then when he also like was super comedic and like was kind of cash. Like I think he had the right balance, and he knew how to kind of bring his voice up and down and his energy up and down in a lot of those moments.
Yeah, it was nice to see a villain that wasn't truly a villain. He was just a dad worried about his kids. So that was just, again, it was really cool the way that he brought that to life. And again, like you said, when he goes over top, it's great. And then when he also plays up those comedic moments, it's just like we're watching Everyone Loves Raymond again. And he's just grumbling about how much he hates his brother or something like that. Like it's so nostalgic for me. And it was really cool to see him have a bit more to work with in this Pixar film.
And he said that was a great source of inspiration for him. So it's great. Hating Raymond. So
yeah, I mean, if you know him as Robert, like
yeah,
he can play disgruntled, like you're saying, but then getting to see him have so much fun with this, being unhinged, was great. And I love that he starts off as a very classic, very one-dimensional, almost Emperor Zurg style villain, right? And I know Emperor Zurg, oddly enough, they also play that off a bit as a joke of him being a father character to Buzz, but that never really goes beyond the joke of it all. Whereas here we actually get to kind of see how it does connect to those themes of familial love, expectations, communication, like you're saying. And it's funny because in the car ride over, I was joking with Darcy how we rarely see other sides of villainous characters, and here we're getting to see him struggling and almost in certain instances almost feeling like he's having like a therapy session in some ways as he's talking about his emotions, this character that never talks about emotions because that's not part of their tradition. I really enjoyed Lord Grygon.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you've just mentioned is absolutely true, and it has everything to do with Elio's influence in the Communiverse and what he's brought as Earth's leader to this Communiverse, and how he's getting Lord Grygon to kind of, in some ways look inwards, and I think have more of a semblance of thought, because like you said it best, Darcy, he's not really a villain. Obviously there's villainous intentions, but you get to understand his perspective. And I think that's just a growing desire these days. Like I think villains are now more than anything, even you could say probably even before Thanos, you could go all the way back to like even just the Dark Knight, and think about just how much people have always really connected with wanting to know the villain's story and what motivates them and what drives them. Everyone always knows what drives a hero. And I think, again, Pixar's kind of playing in that land of just saying like, maybe this isn't a villain, but just someone who's misunderstood or doesn't have, isn't able to communicate or understand how to communicate from an emotional level.
Yeah, and I think that's also paired alongside all these incredible additional voices and this larger cast with, I'm not going to go through all of them, but like I want to give a special shout out to Jamila Jamil for all my fellow Good Place fans out there. Of course, her voice is paired so perfectly with her character, and I loved Bob Peterson as the universal user's manual, where he's constantly trying to tell people the meaning of life or the meaning of the universe, and then everyone's just asking him dumb questions like who'd win in a fight, 10 monkeys or a gorilla. And I love that element to it. It's so good. But Justin, you brought him up earlier, Brendan Hunt, who we know as Coach Beard in Ted Lasso, as Gunther Melmac. I love that that's a reference to Alf. The planet Alf is from is Melmac, and there's a few 80s and 90s sort of alien cinema and TV references in this movie. I didn't catch all of them, I'm sure. And in terms of references, I also didn't catch the Pixar the next Pixar movie. I'm sure that there's a hint somewhere in there. I got to watch it again. Or the Pizza Planet truck. Did you see the Pizza Planet truck, Darcy, at all?
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was making a stop at that base or something like that.
Right? It's set in space. I think so. I will say there is one reference that I want everyone to catch. And all I will say is it is a reference to Luca, and it had my heart aflutter. So I'm really excited for people to catch that one. Yeah. But nice. That's all I will say about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Brendan Hunt was a surprise and delight to see. I think his character was like he definitely had me laughing out loud in that theater.
Yep.
People were chuckling, but like I was just like the intensity and the way they animated his intensity. Like that's where when we talk about like some of like the turning red or the win or lose influence, like the way they animated
His
the
eyes pop out
intensity
of his skull at one
for
point, right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome, and I love that they were able to just give so much more energy to Brendan's performance in that moment with really great animation to kind of go along with it. But like we kind of been talking about it, we've been hinting at it. We've been trickling it around. Let's talk about this story high level. You know, I honestly, there's things obviously that happen in this story that we're not going to spoil, but there really isn't anything to spoil, right? Like in a sort of a grand scheme things, a lot of what we've talked about is pretty surface level, and that is what this film is. It has a really focused story that feels grounded and relatable, and really just centered around some of like the classic like Pixar core themes, but just like with a cosmic twist. You know what I mean? Like it's the heart. It's a story about identity. There's grief involved. There's just connections, and it's all just told through this epic big sci-fi adventure. So I feel like we haven't really spoiled anything as much as we've just kind of really given off the impression that there's just so much of what we anticipated and love from like classic Pixar finding its way back into something like this.
Yeah, I like the way that this movie takes so many opportunities to explore all the different ways that someone could feel alone at different times, and how that is the ongoing thing is that you might feel alone at some point, but you're never alone truly once you look around you type thing. Like it's just the constant way that you're always going back to this, are we alone in any regard, was just such a really cool way of, again, driving the plot forward throughout this movie and making connections between these characters that are galaxies apart to begin with. So it was really cool.
yeah, and I think it's Justin, you mentioned it feels like classic Pixar. It definitely does. I think it's delightfully simple, right? It's one of those things
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, it's simple, but that's not a bad thing. I think there are some minor pacing issues that I had up front with how quickly things escalate and how quickly we're sort of thrown into the communiverse section of the movie. But I would rather that than a rushed ending, which this movie surprisingly doesn't suffer from, in my opinion. I think when you take into account that this movie is following a young boy, it kind of, Darcy, I was almost talking myself out of my own complaints with some of the pacing when I talked to you, because we were like, but this is how an 11-year-old space-loving boy would maybe even tell this story. Right? He'd want to get to the good parts of the story. So I kind of understand the pacing aspects as well, in terms of it sort of feeling a little bit messy, because it is, from the perspective very in a sense of Elio. And so I do think it works, but just from like my sort of critic brain looking at this movie, I can definitely sense that it is a bit of a rush at the beginning.
Yeah, I think looking at some of the pacing issues like you're pointing out, I think it's more of a product of things that happened during the production rather than it being like, I get that we can kind of make a justification as to maybe why it makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely think that a lot of what you're talking about, I think I saw as well, and I think that that's definitely related to some of the things that happened within this production. But keeping with obviously talking about just what you were mentioning, Darcy, like Elio's loneliness, the loss, the search of belonging, and it's just how relatable that is. And I don't even think it's relatable just to like maybe younger viewers in terms of just this idea of wanting to figure out who you are, but I think so many older audience members are going to understand Elio and where he's at from not necessarily resolving their own personal things. Like it was incredible to feel so connected to Elio and almost be like, I could see myself being that kid. That was me as a kid, and I think that that's the big imagination, the idea of getting so swept up in everything, wanting to just belong and feel like you have a connection. I think that that's incredibly relatable across the board to all ages, and I love the comedy, the comedic aspect of just the idea of like mistaken identity with him being, Earth's leader. And I think that just sets up for some cool comedic moments. Like his first confrontation with Lord Grygon was really, really great. But yeah, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about like the idea that this film is just, it's so true to what Pixar is. It feels fresh, but it's familiar, and you can see all the influences of the movies that and love from Pixar just kind of inserted in at certain parts into here, from like the emotional honesty aspect, or even just a visual tone, like we were saying with Turning Red, or Win or Lose. And I think it's just, Elio really does stand out on its as being unique, and a very ambitious, if I might say so, Pixar film, like in terms of just what it's doing, and to your point, Nate, still keeping it simple.
Well, yeah, and I think too, like, you mentioned it's funny, Darcy, like you can attest to this. I was giggling throughout this movie. Like we were in a press screening with only like us and maybe 8 other people, and I think I was maybe the loudest one, giggling and chuckling away.
I can attest you were.
Every single comment.
I definitely was the same in mine. Like, especially like I said, with the scene with Brendan Hunt's character, I was just dying of laughter with just how well they were animating it. It was so good.
The movie is really, really funny. It's a lot of fun, and I think
it's funny and fun.
It's funny and fun. Put that as the pull quote. I will say though, I want to credit Pixar, because I think, and this is something that again shouldn't surprise me coming from Pixar, but I do want to credit them for giving the audience, and specifically younger audience members, like more credit. Right, we talk about these animated movies, not necessarily having to hold the hand of their audience or over explain things, or just sort of give very simplified messages. I love that this is a multifaceted sort of theme that is in this movie. The movie doesn't just showcase just loneliness, like you said, Darcy. It shows how loneliness can mean more than just being sad physically by yourself with no one around. It can be the feeling of being othered or being weird or unique. That is a form of loneliness in itself. And so I think it's something that audiences of all ages can learn from with this movie. And so I'm so happy that we have the incredibly talented teams at Pixar who are spearheading these kinds of stories and these messages, because they're important for families and people of all ages to really take into account.
But it's also goes back to the theme that we've always talked about. It's we say that this can often be targeted for kids, and this is definitely, I would say, a kids movie, but there is something there for those adults that are taking their kids there. It's not tone deaf. It's not just speaking to the one generation that's in the room watching this movie. It's reaching out and trying to teach more to all of it, and that's it. Like, I connected with Lord Grygon to a certain degree of wanting the best, but not trying to over project when I'm on my kid. I don't want to ever make them feel like they need to do what I tell them to do. They need to be their own person, and that's something that's thoroughly explored in that idea of the lack of communication, the sense of yearning and loneliness as well. Like, there's just so many layers of how all of those themes and each of these characters is explored. It's so well done. And for all the right reasons, because I think it's something that audiences are going to appreciate in the long run, whether young or old. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, look, we've obviously talked extensively about this. I know it might be a stretch, but I'm sure it's not for some. But what are your final thoughts? I would love to know your final thoughts and your score, which is going to be out of 1 to 5 glasses of glorp.
Oh, nice. That sounds very refreshing. Elio is, simply put, a great sci-fi buddy adventure movie. So much heart, so much weirdness, like we're talking about, but that uniqueness and charm that Pixar has. You're going to be floating in space with how immersive it is. Definitely. And again, I can't believe I'm saying this. Go see this movie in 3D. Go see this movie. If you're in the States, go see this movie in 4DX, because that looks freaking awesome. Where they're moving, the chairs are moving, there's smoke and stuff like that. They were hyping it up on the reels. Just do it. Trust me. Go see this movie. Wear the 3D Trust me, wear the 3D glasses because they will catch all your tears like they did mine. The performances, the score all work in rhythm with each other, and they had me laughing and crying as the movie just seamlessly shifts tone from one tone to the next. Despite the minor pacing inconsistencies, I really, really enjoyed my time with Elio, and it is up there as one of my top animated films of the year. And one of my top Pixar animated films, which is awesome. It's so cool to be able to sort of continue to add to this legacy of phenomenal work from this studio. And so I'm happy to give Elio an incredibly solid 4.5 out of 5 glasses of glorp.
Where's Good Dinosaur on that list?
It's not exactly as high, and that's okay.
He
that's okay.
said it was lower.
It's a
he
little
said
lower.
it was lower to me, and that offended me.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm stirring up the pot here at the end of this review. I know we're trying to wrap things up. So Darce, I'll let you go. What are your final thoughts on your score?
Aside from Nate's thoughts on Good Dinosaur, I agree with him wholeheartedly about this film. It was so much fun, and it's a huge win for Pixar, I think, in the fact that they're telling an original story that is engaging and has so much heart and soul, much like older Pixar films, and just the amount of relatability they managed to cram into this, what was it, hour and 40-minute runtime, I think, something like that. Like, they put so much in there that makes this whirlwind of a ride so enjoyable and so endearing. So yeah, I'm right beside Nate. 4.5 out of 5 glasses of glorp.
Nice.
To be fair, if Peter Sohn is listening, I loved Elemental. Okay, so come on, you can't win them all. It's fine.
No, and the only reason I bring up Good Dinosaur is that I know that there were some behind the scenes issues with the production in regards to that film, if I'm not mistaken. But with Elio, it's been well documented that this is a film that went through some big changes behind the scenes. Domee Shi joined midstream as co-director. There were delays, this writer's strike, there were rewrites, and even a teaser trailer that hinted at a completely different story with different character beats, and the way Lord Grygon was influenced in this, in that version, was entirely different. Like, the story was just entirely different from what we got. And honestly, in most cases, that kind of production turbulence, it tends to show in a final product. And maybe that's what those pacing issues are. But here's the surprise for me, though. I think Elio just feels remarkably cohesive. It's heartfelt. It's visually fresh. It's a cosmic coming of age story that blends big sci-fi imagination with such a deep emotional core that is classic Pixar. I think the visuals are they're incredibly vibrant. They're weird in the best ways. And the performances, like we said, they're top notch, all grounded, all sincere. And the themes of identity, connection, and belonging are they all really land. And like we were saying, it's just so relatable to audiences of all ages. And, like I said, despite the pacing bumps in the journey, I think Elio 100% sticks to landing. It's warm, it's weird, and it's wonderfully original. And I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5 glasses of glorp.
Drink up,
Drink up. Yeah, absolutely. Drink up. I don't
it looked
know
really
about
good.
This 40. The glorp?
The
yes,
glorp looked really
good.
It had stuff in it. Like, you know how I feel about chewables in my beverages. Keep them separate, please.
For sure. I like a bubble tea.
Disney's already working on the glorp with the bobas. They're putting it in their glorp, dude.
Bro, I'm telling you, they do it at Epcot. It'll sell.
I'm there.
People will be glorping that stuff up. I'm telling you.
Down.
They're going to just glorping it down, bro. It's going to be sloppy. Also, just as a side note, I don't know how crazy I am about this whole 40X thing. I did see some people like promoting 40X movie experiences that look like a crazy ride. I saw one, and I don't know if it was over exaggerated, but I saw a couple where it's like they were shaking and moving around and they had popcorn. It's like, how are you able to eat like that? Like, you're being tossed around like you're on a ride. Do you bring popcorn on a roller coaster?
What's
I don't know.
confusing is that there's always water advertised too. Like, are you getting sprayed? Like, apparently Twister, it rained, basically.
They spray you with glorp, Darcy. That's how it works.
No.
Yep, that would be amazing.
Sticky.
Or it's just someone when it's broken that spits at you. Like, come on.
It's Glordon spit just
job.
drooling on you. Yeah, I love it.
Those were his tears? I don't know.
Oh, man. Okay, well, we've definitely run too long now. Listen, thank you so much for joining us for our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Elio. As I mentioned, it's in theaters Friday, June 20th, which is tomorrow. And a huge thanks to our friends at Disney Studios Canada for allowing us to see this movie early for review. As mentioned, there are interviews out now on our YouTube channel and on podcast feeds for Elio. I had an interview with Brad Garrett, an interview with Domee Shi, available now. Go check those out. A lot of great insights from both of those on the production, and especially talking to Domee Shi about just, I asked her a really fun question in regards to what would she want to send out to space as like a first contact, if it was a song, a movie, or a snack, and she gave me all three. So her responses are fantastic for it. So go check that out. And keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes out now for you to enjoy, including our spoiler-free reviews for How to Train Your Dragon, Predator, Killer of Killers, and from the world of John Wick, Ballerina. Those are available on podcast feeds right now for you to enjoy. We are obviously amidst this hot geeky summer, I believe is what we call it, Nate. It is
what we all call it. Darcy says it all the time. He's always like, it's so hot.
With it's the summer of
sweaty.
It's the summer of 2025.
You make it weird.
I know. Pete Gordon's it up for sure. But he's not wrong. It is gonna be a wild summer.
Today. Yeah.
It was hot today. I meant actually in terms of the amount of stuff that's going to be coming out.
That's exciting.
Which we're going to be staying on top of as much as possible. We got some fun interviews and other stuff coming up soon. Ironheart, Marvel Television's Ironheart is our next sort of line of sight. Nate's got some fun stuff up for Apple TV's Foundation that's going to be coming up as well. So lots of good stuff to look forward to. All stuff that is, as we would love to call, geek-centric. Right? Like just geek-centric stuff.
I love it.
So
Stuck the landing.
landing.
No, the landing. I stuck the landing.
Oh, stuck the landing.
Okay. Let's just keep going.
Stuck. Okay. I'm sorry. You know what? The last thing I forgot to do here, and usually I do it right off the bat. If you want to reach out to us and let us know what you think about this lovely episode of us bantering about Elio, well, you can do so by reaching out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. You can hit us up on Instagram at wearegeekcentric and on Twitter at GeekcentricYT. We also have a TikTok, which is also at We Are Geekcentric. So go find us there. Okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. Thank you for making the time for doing the spoiler-free review. As we say.
Okay, bye. Love you.
Okay, bye. Love you.
Okay, bye. I love you.